Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Coffee with Vern Harnish to talk about scaling up today. My name is Alex Faust. I'm head of our growth team here at Growth Institute. And as you know, our guest today is Vern Harnish. And for those of you who don't know him, Vern is also known as the Growth Guy. He's the CEO of Gazelles and a founder of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is the largest network of entrepreneurs with 12,000 members around the world. And most of you probably know him as the author of the best-selling books, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, The Greatest Business Decisions Ever Made, and Scaling Up. So it seems like we have a lot of people joining us right now on the Facebook Live. So let me first quickly start by sharing the main reason why we're doing this Facebook Live today. About a month ago, we had a webinar with Vern, and we've been getting great feedback since that webinar, which was great. There were hundreds of people there and way too many questions to answer live. And many of them were directed at Vern. So we found them very interesting and useful for the community. And we decided to ask Vern to join us here today to answer those burning questions and share his experience with you. So for those of you who are live now, make sure that you are putting your questions in the comments section, and Vern and I will be happy to reply to them. We have about 30 minutes today, so I will make it very productive for you guys and get started. So hi, Vern, welcome. How are you today?
Good, Alex, and happy holidays to everybody out there. I don't know about you, I am like absolutely in the spirit, and I just came off of 6 days of Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins. So I'm like both exhausted and spun up and the whole bit. So it's been a great time of learning for me as well.
Thank you. Awesome that you're back home. So to get started with the first question that we have. How often does the one-page strategic plan need updating?
It's interesting that the answer to that has really changed over this last decade. Things truly are moving faster. And with the technological changes going out there, we have a lot of our clients. I wrote about one in my weekly insight a couple of weeks ago, where they're really beginning to move back to more of a 2-month cycle instead of your standard quarterly cycle. So most of it has to do with your rate of growth. If you're growing, 5, single digits a year, you're probably okay with just the annual plan. And that's a minimum. We're going to be doing that with our company in January. Then if you're running 15%, 10 to 15%, you really need to get back into the room. I think everyone does, and look at it then quarterly. And if you're growing at something like 50 to 100% a year, I just reported on today in my weekly insights, Park Square Homes out of Orlando. They doubled the size of their company this last year. There you're kind of living dog years, and you really have to begin to then shorten the cycle. Facebook, they're really looking at what is their key priorities every 6 weeks now. So short answer, annually for sure. Quarterly is the usual rhythm. A lot of companies are moving in now every 2 months. And if you're living dog years, a month is like everyone else's quarter or year.
Awesome. So how do you determine where to start with this scaling up process?
Well, in the back of the book, we actually put a chapter called Next Steps. And it really says, hey, here are the 5 things you need to do next. But the first thing is to realize our tools and methodologies are really like Sudoku puzzles or crossword puzzles. If you do a crossword puzzle, you start with the things that are easy. You fill in what you can. And you don't get stuck with our sequence, because I really wish business was that neatly organized, but it's not. So first thing you do is you look at people, strategy, execution, and cash, those 4 main areas of the business. And we've got some assessment tools that can help you to figure out. But with your team, you want to decide, all right, look, we got issues in all 4, but in which area do we need to focus the most next? And you want to think about them like they're 4 dominoes. What's the front domino? And then that's where you want to enter. So some of you need to really tighten up execution immediately. Others are executing a mess. We really need to go back and look at strategy. Hey, if you're going to run out of cash this Friday, you better get focused on that. And if you're missing some key players on the team or having some partner issues, if you don't get those addressed, you're not going to have the emotional energy to deal with the other 4. So pick which one of the 4 areas you want to enter. And then we're really going back, Alex, to the basics, which are then set a priority, gather data around that, and then begin to meet and drive success. And that's really that idea of a quarterly theme, picking just one area that you can focus on the most next while you're waiting to figure out all this other stuff that we've called scaling up.
Perfect. Thank you. And I just want to remind everybody who's live here with us, if you have questions for Vern, please type them into the comment section and we will make sure to get to those. So the next question that I have for you came from after the webinar that we hosted. Someone asked, is there anything between startup and scale up? Because I want to scale up. However, I don't feel like I'm ready. I'm working a lot in the business still.
Yeah, that dear friend of mine, Jeffrey Moore, wrote the book on this called Crossing the Chasm. And as you say, you can't leap a chasm in 2 bounds. You've got to get across it. So I wish there was something between startup and scale up, but there isn't. You can just decide that you're going to be a small business. I guess maybe that would be between startup and scale up is your standard small business that we have in the United States. And we know 96% of those companies are under $1 million in revenue. And I think what it just takes to operate it efficiently, they'll learn a lot of that in our scaling up tools. But when you decide you really want to begin to scale, and that is have decent growth, 10, 15, 20% or more a year, that's when our ideas kick in.
Thank you. So how does the company know when they're ready to scale?
I think part of it's, well, first, often the market will tell you, and that's the best indicator. All of a sudden you have something that a lot of people want, and now you're really just trying to run to keep up with what's going on. That is the absolute best scenario when you're getting the market suggesting that. Second, you've got to be mentally prepared for it because there are a lot of additional challenges that come with scaling up. Otherwise, more than the 96%, many of whom would like to scale, don't end up doing it. That's why we wrote the book. And then I think number 3 is if you're not scaling and you want to, then you need to go in and examine very closely the people, strategy, execution, and cash components that we think are necessary, all 4 of which eventually have to be in place, both to handle the scaling and to get yourself prepared to scale. So I'd say market conditions, number 1, and then number 2, that you're mentally ready in order to do it. And by reading through the book, I've seen people say, wow, if this is what it takes, I don't think I want to sign up for it. And it's okay, be a really good small business.
So you talk about being mentally prepared. How do you scale up without actually burning out?
Well, that's why, additionally, I wrote the book, because I saw folks working 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks like Alan Rudy was doing in kind of the opening key chapter of the book. And he then used our tools to be able to basically run the company a day a week. He's still doing things and out in the marketplace, but that's why I wrote the book, because I saw all these entrepreneurs spending their entire week, and really in many cases spinning their wheels.
The next question we have is how to create a performance culture to drive growth.
Well, that was the fundamentals of the Rockefeller Habits. I like to use the analogy of a thermostat. That was a business that I got my start in. And, we have this heating air conditioning system. And if it didn't have any controls, it would just run wild. We would be uncomfortable. We'd waste a lot of energy. We'd waste a lot of money. Again, that describes a lot of people's companies. A lot of energy wasted, a lot of money wasted, not getting much done, everyone uncomfortable. And the idea of a thermostat is for you to first pick a target, set that priority. I want it to be 72 degrees or 22 degrees centigrade. Number 2, I then need to measure it. I need data. And with a thermostat, what's nice is that data is continuous. And the more you can make that data stream continuous with dashboards and scoreboards and the rest that we emphasize in our work, the better. And then number 3, it then has to send signals back. And we do that as humans through our email, or we suggest you can get a lot more done in just a quick conversation than you can trying to solve a problem in 10 emails. You want then that to get communicated back to whatever or whoever's doing the work. And so really proper delegation and performance is driven by the exact same principles as a thermostat. Now, what's cool is we got a lot cooler thermostats today. We have the Nest like we have, so I can kind of monitor it remotely, and our dashboarding tools allow people to do that with their own phone. I know Naomi Simpson, when she's on a judge for the Shark Tank show in Australia, and I've been there, she can, while she's on that show, she can pull up her phone real quick and at any moment know the performance of her company real time. And AI has been built into the Nest thermostat, so it can begin to, through technology or machine learning, watch what's going on and begin to make some of its own decisions. And so that's why we've been so adamant. You've got it. If you're going to scale this century, you better figure out your industry plus machine learning or AI. And so to me, that's the thermostat is our best example, and that's what the Rockefeller Habits mirror.
Thank you. That's great. And I know that's a big priority for us at Growth Institute, is making sure that we have those dashboards real time so we can make great business decisions to scale.
Well, and the people doing the work know how they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's just critical. Can you imagine working out or going to any sporting event and not knowing what the score is? It seems really crazy, but that's how a lot of people run their companies, is without any visibility to what's happening.
Thank you. So other than dashboards and visibility, do you have a must-have list when you're looking to scale?
Well, that's what created the original Rockefeller Habits checklist. And there are 10 items on there that aren't in order except number one, that we found if you can have those in place. You don't have to have any of them in place, by the way, and the company could be 100 years old, as we've run into in the Middle East and Asia and other places where we do our work. So you can survive without any of them. You're just going to waste a lot of time, waste a lot of energy, having to work 80-hour work weeks and not getting the kind of outcomes or results that you're looking for. So that's the original intent of those 10 Rockefeller habits. By the way, number one, which was put forth by a dear friend of mine, Pat Lencioni, is 5 dysfunctions of a team. If the team's not healthy, if it doesn't know how to kind of fight without killing each other, surface really the difficult issues, really look objectively at the data that's flowing, not in contact with the marketplace, have gotten too insular. Man, if the team's not healthy, I don't care how smart they are, it's going to be difficult to move the venture forward and implement a lot of the tools that we suggest.
So we got a question now from Scott Nash, who...
Oh, hey, Scott.
He's asking a question. Vern, do you have any insights on how to create good metrics? I found out the hard way that percentages versus dollars and averages versus outlier events work well, and that a lot of good or poor performance can be hidden or distorted in those averages and percentages.
Yeah, Scott, good to, you've done a great job. I know as you've gone from 20 million to $250 million beyond. That's mom's organics market. Scott, thank you. You answered your question, but a couple of things that come to mind. First, I'm a big fan of Moneyball. And I know that book really exposed the fact that a sport like baseball literally measures everything. And their intuition, their guess of what metrics really drove outcomes was been misguided for decades. And so Billy Beane went in there, said, hey, let's really gather the data, see if there's any correlation. A lot, again, what machine learning can do to help us see crazy correlations that never would make sense, but really give us insight. And they found on-base percentage. And so John Ratliff found the same thing at his call center business. His industry is one of the most measured. They actually had a quality award that you could receive if you hit these 25 metrics for each of your call centers. And John used it to drive what he thought was performance. But then he woke up one morning after reading Moneyball and wondered, oh my gosh, I wonder if all that we're measuring has no correlation to the outcomes I'm seeking. And so he went to a COO, Kevin. He said, Kevin, we've got it on each of our 24 locations, this quality score. Let's correlate that to customer churn. And the call center business have a tendency to lose their customers quite frequently. Is there a correlation between high quality and lower customer churn? And as John likes to say, the world is really kind of crazy strange. His call center that had the lowest quality score actually had the highest customer retention. And the center that had the highest quality score actually had the lowest customer retention. And that was just accidental because there was no correlation up or down with the other 22 centers that he had. And it forced him to go back and say, all right, could I find my Moneyball statistic? And he did. And once he began to drive on that single statistic, that's when he drove his customer retention way up, his employee retention to industry record levels by a factor of 10, and ultimately drove a 5x performance over industry average in terms of his profitability. So I think first is finding that right measure. And that's just looking at a lot of correlations, which again, machine learning can help you do. And once you do, then stay laser focused on it. Now, back to Scott's kind of initial example, and he's absolutely right. I remember when we went to the FedEx experience and we heard directly from Fred Smith. Remember, their promise was absolutely positively overnight. And that night they were moving 5 million packages. And he says, if we were 1/100th of 1% at, within, being 100%, we'd still lost 5,000 packages. And so early on, they learned that it was much more important to report the absolute number of packages that didn't make it there absolutely positively than to convert it into a percentage, which then can hide or distort the fact that you're still hurting 5,000 people out there, which can damage your brand long term.
Thank you. So I want to move over into some team questions. And the next question is, are there effective ways to get your business partner to commit and buy into the scaling up methods and practices?
Yeah, it's interesting. With a lot of partnerships, there's usually kind of a Mr. or Mrs. outside, and then there's the Mr. or Mrs. inside. I remember that with Stuart Moore and Jerry Greenberg at Sapient. And Jerry was the outside guy. And, I think honestly, as long as Jerry said, look, Stuart, you are accountable for all the stuff in terms of running the company, do it as you see fit. I don't think Jerry was ever going to get on board with any of this kind of stuff. Stuart was the one driving it, and he would come teach for us every year at MIT. And you could tell he was the Mr. Inside driving the operations. But you still need the support of the other partners at a minimum. And so I very specifically, rather than hand the book to a partner, pull a few what you think are juicy pages or chapters. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Yeah, we got this cold running around our house and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get it. I'm going for my IVC tomorrow morning to hopefully prevent it. But going back, what I really recommend very specifically is take the book Scaling Up and have someone read the barriers chapter. It's a good summary chapter, fun to read, that'll get somebody at least into the spirit of what it is that we're going to talk about. Then have them read the core chapter because it is core to the business. And then if they want to, then read next the whole execution section, the brown section. And that way it'll be much less daunting for somebody than to crack open the book and take a look at it. Or we've had partners bring their partner to our CEO boot camp. We have them bring them to our Scale Up Summit. They'll come to a workshop. They'll get him in one of our kind of live educational activities, and that'll normally bring them along. It's usually strangely the opposite. Usually the CEO is super stoked about this, as John again was, Ratliff. And he learned it at the Birthing of Giants, where Scott Nash went to as well, the MIT program I founded. And they come back and the team would look like he had two heads, like, give it 2 weeks, this too shall pass. John goes back to MIT, comes back all excited, still can't get anybody on board. So we grabbed the whole team. At the time, he had 13 and brought them down to this kind of old Xerox training center bunker down in Virginia and immersed the team for 2 days. I just came back from YPO where we did one of those activities. And he says, they're about 3 hours into the first morning and the team looks at John and goes, John, we've got to do this stuff. And John's looking at him like, I'm going to kill you guys. So getting more people just immersed in the ideas, reading the book, coming to workshops is really going to create buy-in.
Awesome. Thank you. And Glenn Marvin just commented, Vern, when are you coming to New Zealand?
Oh, I know. I got to get back. I was just talking about how much I love the Kiwis And my very favorite EO chapter event was in Auckland, New Zealand. So you guys really know how to live down there for sure. Yeah, but I'm going to be back over there. We're doing and I think the New Zealand, the YPOers are invited, but we're doing an Australia-wide YPO 2.5-day program. That's become one of the most popular around the globe. And so that's going to be in Brisbane next spring.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question we have is about huddles, daily huddles. So person is asking, are huddles seem like a drag race where speed is a priority? Is this correct, or should it be more like a relaxed walk in the park?
First, the one decision, one answer to almost every question is it should align with your culture. So if you're this go, fast charging, moving ahead culture, that better be reflected in your meeting style. If you're more of a relaxed, kind of laid back culture, then obviously that's going to be felt within your meetings as well. That doesn't change the fact that daily huddle should be no more than 15 minutes. And generally on average, it should take no more than a minute per person. So if you've got 6 people in that meeting, it can be done in 6 minutes. And generally speaking, almost every one of the daily huddles that has matured and become effective, if any outsider was standing there, they'd have no idea what all these magical words and codes and numbers meant. But to the team that's been hearing them every day, they're putting the patterns together very, very quickly. So in the beginning, you're going to feel rushed because people are going to take too long to explain things. They're not going to get to the specifics. But once it's up to speed, staying on time, though to an outsider, it might look like a horse race. To the people inside, it's a nice pace.
Good. Next question is, what's the number one thing that blocks companies from scaling up?
There's not one. That's why we created the 4 main categories: people, strategy, execution, and cash. And one of the things that Bill Gross found at Idea Lab, when he looked at the 100 companies that they had scaled and another 100 that he had invested in, he wanted to see which one of those 4 was more important. And his research came back with 2 interesting conclusions. First, it's like a table with 4 legs. All 4 are equal. And if you're missing one of those legs, it can stand there, but it's quite wobbly. But what's even more interesting is he found a 5th, and it is mentioned in scaling up, and that is market timing. Again, I kind of go back to an earlier question. The market will make you look smart or make you look dumb. Though my latest 2 slides, I've been starting all my workshops and keynotes, show this horse kind of stomping on an old Model T as if the automobile was going to put the horse out of business. Yet last year was a $300 billion thriving industry. And so I don't think there's any industry problems. I do think there are leadership problems. And a lot of that is, how are we going to maybe have to pivot this business, in their case, from transportation to entertainment, which has made the equine industry very successful. We just saw, I mentioned it today in my insights, Michael Dell. It's now officially, they're going to go back public December 28th, here in a couple of weeks. And that really is a result of him being private and having to pivot that company from primarily products to services, even though it's still the Dell technology company led by Michael Dell. So there's no bad industry. There's just bad leadership. And that's what scaling up's about.
Thank you, Vern. And unfortunately, our time is almost out. So if you do have any other questions, please type them into the chat now. But, you know, although time is running out and we won't be able to answer all the questions, we do still want to help you grow your business. And so my first suggestion is, Vern has written some great blog articles on our website. So number 1, check those out. And if you haven't read the book, absolutely do that. But if you're looking to get deeper and really implement the methodologies, I suggest you check out the Scaling Up Master Business course. And my team is going to put a link in the Facebook chat now so you can learn more. But today I want to announce that we've opened up a second cohort of 75 executives to take the program after last month's webinar we had way more applications than seats available. So our team in Vern decided that we would open up a second cohort, and it's going to start on January 23rd. And some of you might already know about it, but for those of you that don't, basically within 3 months, we're going to guide you through the most difficult process of launching and optimizing scaling up in your business. And each week you're going to get a new video from Vern to learn, plus some worksheets and assignments that you go through with your team. And it's more than 9 hours of study material and implementation material that you'll be able to use. And on top of that, on a weekly basis, you meet with a scaling up coach and the community, come together for these live sessions where you do Q&A and have discussions with the other participants. It's all about implementation bit by bit of the methodology. There's one-on-one coaching as well to really focus in on your business and the problems that you're facing. And then finally, the newest asset of the program are these masterminds. And we break you up into groups of 8 to 10. You go through 5 online group calls to share, receive feedback, share your challenges, the inspiration, and really keep each other accountable. Because, well, learning from the experts is fantastic. We've seen that the peer-to-peer or leader-to-leader learning is what has created some of the biggest changes and aha moments in our community. So you're not only getting the know-how from the experts like Vern, but also a powerful business network to stay connected to as long as you want. And my team has posted a link in the chat for you to learn more and apply on our website. It's growthinstitute.com/scaling up. And last thing before we get back to the couple questions is I want to highlight that the application, that this program is application based, because we want to make sure that there's synergy in the group and that people are able to learn from each other. So we look to see, that you've reached a certain level of growth where you can really take the scaling up methodology to make an impact in your business. And again, everything can be found on our website. We already have 23 of our 75 seats taken. So make sure to go to the website and apply so you can get into that next class on the 23rd. And if you have any other questions, you can write them on the comment section or send me an email. We'll put my email in the chat as well. It's alex@growthinstitute.com. And Vern, just before we sign off and say a couple of extra words, I have another question from Kobe here. Let me just pull it up. Kobe said, hi, Vern, I'm taking the MBD and the scaling up course. So hi, Kobe, nice to see you. And just finished his first live session this morning. Do you think it's possible to scale up a business with seasonal swing? I'm trying to scale up a painting company that loses half of our market, exterior painting, in 6 months out of the year. And I feel like I have to solve the seasonal problem before we can scale. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Kobe, hey, we know each other. I want to make a comment before I answer that. You'd asked me before this, that question about, what is the biggest constraint to scaling? And it really is between our ears. Again, I think the Tony Robbins session I went to emphasized that almost from a personal perspective, but even from a business perspective. And that's why I had a tough decision who was going to endorse the front of my book. I got Tom Peters on the first book, Jim Collins wrote the foreword on the second, and I chose a student of mine, Henry McGovern, who scaled now the largest European owner of restaurants in the world. He just bought Starbucks in Germany. They just hit the $2 billion mark. And Henry said, look, I think we've done it. They were named the best performing over the last 12 years in the entire industry by a factor or 2 over Domino's and crushed everyone else. So he's grown, he's got outstanding operations. And he said it's because we're first a training company and then we're a restaurant company. And we saw that with Steve Jobs. His last project was Apple University. So this idea of executive education, I think, was a nice to have maybe last century, but it is the thing that's critical if you want to scale here in this century. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So back to Colby's. Generally speaking, a lot of companies would love to have this challenge because they spend the other 6 months kind of preparing then for the 6-month onslaught, and so they can kind of take a rest. We've got very much the same thing. There's not hardly anything happens in December in my world, or July and August. And I'm like, that is awesome, because that mirrors, my family life with 4 children going through their whole schools. And so we use those times really to lay the groundwork to do preparation. Even Doug Harrison, when he was growing, he took the company to $1 billion. they'd have 3 quarters of push, 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 push revenue. And then he loved having a slow fourth quarter so that he could let the systems catch up. Now, the other obvious answer is you want to acquire a business that's counter-cyclical so you can smooth out the flows. But I've known folks that got these seasonal businesses, and rather than hate it, they embrace it and say, hey, we're able to make a year's worth of revenue in 6 months, and let's take a little bit of time off and live life the rest of it. So maybe consider your perspective on it and consider it a blessing. Because I feel for the retailers where just when I'm wanting to kind of slow down in December, this is their busiest month. And that has got to be tough always.
Absolutely. So Vern, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to be with you and answer these questions. And I'm sure the community also appreciates it. And thank you to everybody who joined us live today. It was great hearing your questions. And if you have any questions about the Scaling Up methodology or the Master Business course, please write in the comments or send me an email, alex@growthinstitute.com. And look forward to seeing you again soon, Vern.
You got it. Take care, Alex. Happy holidays.